Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to get started for this select board meeting on Monday, August the 15th. There are just three of us here this evening. Two of our colleagues are away. First order of business are the August 1st select board minutes. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes of August 1st?
I'll move that.
I'll second. Great. Discussion.
I didn't see anything that you changed.
Nor I. Cheyenne, thank you. Nice job. All in favor of accepting the minutes of August 1st, say aye. It's unanimous. The orders or the accounts payable up through August the 15th. And I ask for a motion to accept the orders / accounts payable up to August 15th.
I'll move that we pay the order through August 15th. I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Discussion. I think there's anything I have. I think I asked my question today already. Anything, Jim? Okay.
I didn't see anything odd.
Still early in the year.
Huh?
Early in the year.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor of accepting the orders, say aye.
Aye.
Great. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
Just one future agenda item that we had in the minutes from our last meeting. We had talked about service awards for some of
Yes.
our local businesses.
Yeah, and I've been giving that some thought too, so let's get it on the agenda.
It's kind of hard to hear.
Oh,
Excuse me?
sure, we'll try to speak up.
Thank you.
I didn't hear what she said.
She's having trouble hearing.
Okay, sorry.
It's a big word.
That was not selective hearing, by the way. There's a joke, long-standing joke there that goes back to a hearing test.
So just kind of, I looked into some pricing, not definitive pricing, but just kind of estimates. and, it's roughly 125 to 160 per plaque for purchase and grading.
Yeah, the Conservation Commission just recently got a plaque and, which is hanging upstairs, so we could actually either do something very similar or at least get the pricing from them.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I don't know if we can take an action to authorize that, or if we have to wait.
Well, let's put it on the upcoming agenda to discuss. Anything else? Yep. Are there public comments?
Public comments?
Yes.
I'm not sure this is the right time or place, but I spoke last time about my concern about the field down at exit 9.
Could you please come forward so we can,
Before you sit here?
yes, please.
Okay. We'll all hear better.
Yeah.
I live right across from it, right directly across from it. And when I read about the proposed building of a 9,000 square building that's supposed to be open 7 to 7, we know it's going to be open earlier and later. Because if they have to deliver things, it's going to come in much earlier. If they take things away, it's going to be much later. So it's not 7 to 7. And the impact that that's going to have on my neighborhood is a lot of light and noise. And that's of concern to me because I just wonder at what point is Vermont going to say, we are a different kind of a state and we value green spaces. And it doesn't have to be commercial just because there's an open space. So I'm not sure what is available for the townspeople to do. I know the Act 250 and all that. I don't know who makes the final decision, but when that is decided, if it could be published so that we know whether we get a chance to vote or not would be helpful.
Well, I wonder if technically you are land abutter, and then you would have the right to give testimony at the hearing, if, assuming there is a hearing. But we don't really know anymore at this point.
Don't know anymore at this point.
Yeah.
So it's all right to step back and wait.
We all,
Because I'm afraid it's
I
going to
think-
happen and then it's going
I
to be
think
like, oh, nobody told me.
we are all in that same boat right now. I don't have any information to add other than they were still collecting information for the Act 250 process.
Okay.
So can I ask a question? I'm wondering if the planning commission knows. I thought as part of the Act 250 application, and I forget the correct terminology here, but there was a list of people who would be invited to a hearing if there was one. Was that part of the original application?
I think the abutters, and they should be noted in the application that's been submitted already, become part of the certificate of service. So the abutters would get notifications of any, permit applications, any changes. So you should have gotten that. I think you should have at least got that Schedule G that they submitted as part of the certificate of service, I would assume.
If you didn't get it, you might not be done.
I live right across from it. Why wouldn't I be a butter?
I don't know.
Across the roads are others.
Yeah,
I was going to make my opening comments.
If not, you should notify, you should contact the District 3 office down in Springfield, to make sure you're on the abutters list if in fact, or that you're on the certificate of service if you are an abutter.
And could you please repeat the name of the place I should get a hold of?
It would be the
Springfield office,
100 Middle.
District 3 Environmental Commission, Springfield, Vermont. We're happy to send you the address.
Thank you. I would love to have it. Do you know where I live? Do you know who I am and where I live?
You should tell me and I'll write it down like this minute.
All right, Jessica Bernard, 3 Martinstone Road.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
thank you, okay. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, let's go on to old business. Oh, Shannon.
I was just trying to get Dave's attention.
technology, right?
And then just make sure that your audio is off.
Yeah.
Taxes.
But your actual.
Oh, that's the big
Because-
check up there. Well, we'll have to wait, Are we set?
I think so.
Is that right down here?
Okay, going on to the first order of business, the town plan update. In the last few days, I learned of another situation with the town plan that I don't think any of us saw. We're very aware that there was an attempt, there was a lot of work done by the planning commission to address what they thought was going to be a quick change in language. But in fact, they added additional chapters and did a lot of work. A number of issues arose around land use, short-term rentals, and et cetera. And this resulted eventually in an attempt at compromise. And now there's been some inconsistencies brought to our attention between the village area text and the land use map. And I'd like Dave, I believe, to talk to that, and then I can pick up after that. Dave?
Yeah, so last meeting, Jim, you actually brought up language about prime ag land in the village center, and my response was, that's a village center, generally that's targeted for development. You have rural residential, you have the rural area. Rural area is predominantly agriculture, meant to be agricultural in nature. So you had mentioned, kind of piqued my interest, you had mentioned the village map, and I took a look at the map. And I took a look at the village chapter text, and included, in addition to the prime ag language that was taken out, you made mention to, there's also language in here that talks about not having retail between 3 corners and 4 corners intersection. And I went back, so let me back up for a second. I went back to Kevin and said, Kevin, why did we tinker with the prime ag language? His response was similar to mine, that, you know, look, this is the village area, it's intended to have development. But I got looking at the mapping of the village area. It's actually fairly large. Goes from 3 corners up to Merritt Road, goes from 3 corners all the way to 4 corners, as you mentioned. And, you know, the language in the village map are actually conflicting, much like land use and the economic chapter. You know, you've kind of, or the text has kind of got districts within the village district. You have the village district that is tended to have development, but we say no, not in prime ag. We can also say, hey, you know, we want really light development or commercial development, and there's no retail between 3 corners and 4 corners. So I brought this conflicting text in the map to Rivers and kind of voiced my concern about, you know, my understanding of what the village should be and the language that's in there. And they came back and said, yes, even though the map, to my knowledge, has been like that ever since, or at least since 2007, Two Rivers couldn't tell me much prior to that. But, you know, so admittedly it's been in here since 2007. But Two Rivers, essentially Peter Gregory came back and said, yeah, that's quite a large village district. His concern would be primarily, that village district being contiguous or continuous between three corners and four corners, kind of like the text says. Essentially, they're not going to approve the town.
Text says it's contiguous.
The text says we want no retail between essentially the fire station and four corners.
Retail, but not zero development.
Light commercial development, essentially what you would see in a rural residential area. So at this point, Two Rivers is not going to approve the plan based upon the map of the village district.
Because they think the map is too wide, the area is too wide.
It's large, and at this point, they're looking to make the municipal plan and regional plans more synonymous, something that they put in their last regional plan. The regional plan has a village area in the three corners area, and there's a village area in the four corners area. We have a village, designated village center in three corners and in four corners. But the village district, which is separate, which is kind of a district as intended, which is where you want your development to be, is actually quite large. The other problem with the village text is it does seem to confuse the village designated centers with the actual village district. It's almost, you get confused as to what exactly, whether they're talking about the village district or whether they're talking about the state designated village center. It almost acts as if the village centers are kind of what's in play, but that's not what's in play. The village district is actually what's in play. So there's actually a fairly large discrepancy there between text and map and clarification that needs to be happening. Essentially, this text that we see here in the village area is conflicting and is confusing and should be rewritten. So at this point, I would recommend that, this is, again, I think as Phil alluded to, we came at this as kind of a tweak and to kind of fix some quick fixes. We added the forest tracks, and we messed with or changed quite a bit of the energy section. At this point, I think that the select board and actually the planning commission needs to look at this as an actual town plan update, not a tweak. And therefore, I would recommend that the select board reject this town plan, send it back to the planning commission to look at and fix the village language and the map, and any other discrepancies that may exist in the town plan that have not been looked at, and treat this as a town plan update prior to 2025. And that would be my rejection, that would be my recommendation at this point in time.
I did receive clarification on this from James Barlow, our town attorney. Because I know we've talked about passing it back and forth. Jim says there is no process in the statute for the select board to just send the proposal back to the PC without otherwise taking any action on it. And it goes on, but that's the clear finding. I think the part that just stopped me in my tracks is that when Two Rivers announced that they weren't going to approve a plan based on their regional plan in conformance with the overall region, came as a bit of a shock, actually. I do know myself, and this is part of what I remember asking last time, is I found myself reading both the state village designation versus the village districts, and began using them improperly, so I wasn't really clear on that. I think as big as this is, there's potentially, there is the opportunity to, for the Planning Commission, town, and Two Rivers to pursue a planning grant. That would fund a professional survey that gets out the issues that we need to get at, and it also would create a funding opportunity for Two Rivers to come back and work with the town on the plan. I've suggested a number of times that if we do a survey, that we do it professionally. A couple of ideas that were floating around, which I'm familiar with, and it was not my original thinking, is for surveys of this type, one sometimes has a focus group to look at topics and begin to refine the survey before it goes to the general public. I believe that the three parties, Planning Commission, the town, and the Two Rivers can pursue that and make some good progress there. I was ready for working on a compromise, but I came to my own thinking that we have a need, looking forward to the use of, in the rural area, that will be, show full respect for the rural area, but also be creative in ways that people who own properties can pay their taxes and keep their. That's my personal opinion, that we didn't have flexibility, and that's why we eventually decided we would resort back to the 2017 language and then go back to the drawing board to work on that piece. We don't have full board members here this evening, so I really would not want to take a vote without the five of us here to do that. We could technically, our guidelines say 3 is a quorum, then we could proceed. Jim, reactions?
Yeah, well, first reaction to me, a question. Just on one thing, so I mean, in terms of residents in the rural areas, right? I think they have flexibility with their property, right? The plan puts restrictions on that when it becomes a commercial development, right? So I just want to clarify that, you know, the plan, I don't think the plan is restricting a lot of residential uses. If you're doing a,
we lightly disagree on
if
that.
you're doing a development, right, that requires Act 250 review, right, then the plan takes over. So I just want to be careful, you know, with that thought process. But what I would say is, you know, I'm open to sending it back to the Planning Commission. I think it would be good to hear from the Planning Commission, you know, kind of what they think.
Well, again, technically speaking, the Planning Commission would, when we're ready to vote and move forward, before the public hearing, and there would be, given the number of days that would lapse before our vote, publicly publishing, not having a public hearing, they would create a reaction, a statement or document to come back to us.
But I think you're suggesting that we reject it, send it back and start over.
Right.
Start the clock from ground zero, right? So I'm open to that suggestion.
Start the clock,
Right.
knowing that there's been an awful lot of work that's already
Yeah.
there.
But it's not a complete redo,
Correct.
it's taking what's already been done and building on that.
Right.
I would recommend, and I think this should be part of the motion, again, there's now the discrepancy in the land use chapter regarding the village section, but, you know, one comment and, 10 minutes later, and it's obvious that that needs to be rewritten. So I think that, again, the quick tweak is come and gone. I think that they need to look at this at this point, as an actual update to the town plan.
Right.
And take the time to look at other sections so that next time around, we don't get to this point and it's like, oh geez, because, at this point, it's either it goes forward, it goes backwards as a rejection, or the select board tinkers with it. So, I would just say that, a good look should be taken at it at this point, and let's get rid of those discrepancies that are there.
Clyde, any thoughts?
So the biggest thing is about the village area and right now, no commercial entities, like a meat market or something like that in between.
So right now, the discrepancy is that it's mapped as a village district.
Yeah.
So one would say the answer to that is yes. But if you look at the print and the language between, it's not really specific, but I think it's between, say, the fire station and Route 4, the answer to that is no. Same problem with the ags, the ag land. It's like, well, the village district is, between 3 corners and 4 corners, or even up, incorporating a small portion past Merritt Road, which is a nice field up there. But, so the map says yes, but the language says no. So, the text and the map need to be more in line, and part of the reason why the text is in there is to limit strip development, which I think the regional planning commission might have. But again, the map says, development there is fine. And actually, we're starting to see some, I understand that we may see some small commercial on Route 12 in between the two sooner rather than later. But right now, we're seeing a whole lot of housing development or renovation in that area. But the answer to your question is the text says no, but the map says yes.
I found myself wondering why this lay dormant since whatever that 3 or 4 plans ago.
That was my question.
Yeah. I can't shoot the messenger. Two Rivers theoretically was representing us and going through it and helping. I found myself reminded of a fatal flaw that I made professionally. In the early 80s, I was still pretty young and junior as a programmer. I was given a lot of responsibility because I was kind of doing well and everything else. And it happened to be a payroll system. I did well. I managed to pay the president correctly over time and so on and so forth. But one year when the taxes changed, there was a major glitch and we were late in the payroll. And it came down to a block of code that I just looked at and said, oh, I can't see where this is called, how it would be used, and so on and so forth. And I never dove into that, never really spent time with it. And sure enough, it came back to bite me a year and a half after I started this project. I wish I knew who the programmer was that wrote that. I would be kind of upset with them, but it was a piece of code that never was used. So I learned the lesson that there could be some flaws in things, or bad language or miscommunications or bad logic in this particular case, that really you wind up having to sort of just look at, be upset with for a little while, but just move forward and fix it. So, John, I don't have, my reaction is I don't have an explanation for that, but I do have that feeling on that part.
The planning commission has a meeting in 2 days. We'll bring this up, which you're proposing, and since you're unlikely to have another meeting within 2 days yourself, you probably hear back from us as to.
Okay, I couldn't repeat that last part, I couldn't hear you.
Uh,
You have a meeting coming up,
Yeah, in 2 days.
right?
And so we will bring this up for discussion on what you're proposing to do. No thoughts either way, except one, and that is if we're going back to Act 250, I'm sorry, if we're going back to Two Rivers, then that's a costly proposition. They're going to charge us.
That's why I mentioned the grant opportunity, and we're ready to talk to Two Rivers about that. And they would work with you, ourselves, and themselves, get all three parties here, to pursue that. And it would be a two-pronged funding effort, one for the survey, and the second would be to pay their fees.
They're also not available right away.
Could you speak to that, Dave? I'm not sure.
They're not available for a couple months down the road.
Okay.
Yeah, they usually aren't, and so this will be probably a long run to get another revised town plan. The planning commission is up for doing it. We like to do things correctly. It's back to the dormant issue. You know that when we worked on this, we worked quite closely with Two Rivers on our version, and all of a sudden they started to rush us along because the money had run out. Normally, these issues, village districts and whatnot, that would have come up because we would have had another meeting, we would have talked to Two Rivers some more, and we probably could have got to the bottom of it. So, dormant, I'm not going to point any fingers where the dormant is, but this is most unusual. Usually when we're done with Two Rivers, we're done for 5 or 6 years, not 3 or 4 months. For what it's worth.
And again, we just know the facts, and I think we have on it. The rushing, the feeling that, did Two Rivers go into this thinking that, it was a quick fix, and the words were going to be tweaked. So I think that's all water under the bridge right now, and I think we fix it.
I don't think only John and I, again on the line, and I don't really have any reaction to your proposal.
Is there anybody on the line?
It's good points and
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'll work on a motion to propose, but again, I feel strongly that we should have full body here. Okay, Dave, anything else? Would Sean have any comments? Okay.
Nobody's,
No, didn't they cancel some participants if they were there?
but nobody's got their hand up.
So there is or there's not a hand up? No. Todd?
I'm sorry, I couldn't get here earlier, but so when you say you're working on a motion, what's the now current thinking on the plan now?
I'm sorry, the door just slammed while you...
What's the now current thinking about the plan moving forward?
that we'll reject it and send it back to the planning commission for revisions.
And then it'll be a much longer term process.
Well, we would hope not, as.
But I mean, like, using Two Rivers, the grant, getting a survey done professionally,
Right.
that's the current thing.
That's right. You're right, there would be a lingering startup, before work could really commence, because Two Rivers would not be available, and also we would go after the grant. Yeah. And I hope work, beginning to understand the survey and some of the ideas about how to do the survey will begin to start percolating during that time.
Can I just make one comment about what was said tonight?
Yep.
Before you move on? So, restrictions, whether they're,
Yeah, I
oh, I was
guess.
supposed to come up, sorry, I forgot.
People can't hear you.
Yeah. Restrictions, whether they're residential or commercial, I think should be made by a body with credibility that they know what the town thinks. It's no more appropriate to restrict someone commercially based on the decisions of a small group of people than it is to restrict people residentially. And so I just want to say, as someone who feels as the target of where those commercial restrictions are going, for me to view a body as having legitimacy to make those commercial restrictions, there ought to be a professional survey done of the town, so you have confidence that it's people, A, who do this for a living, and B, who don't have an agenda. And if a survey is done that's not done by professionals, I'm not gonna view it. And not that it matters what I think, I know I'm just one person, but I'm just gonna say, it doesn't feel credible to me if it's not done that way.
Sure. Todd, I agree with you regarding the professional nature. I don't want to belittle the work that the planning commission and the expertise that they bring to the.
I'm not saying that, all I'm
No, I
saying
didn't hear you,
is
I just want to clarify.
yeah, well, I wanna clarify, I'm not belittling the work either, I'm talking about the work that's done in the future.
Yeah.
But I don't think restrictions should be imposed absent a survey, and I think it's always been done that way, and I think it should.
Yeah, yeah, and as I stated my own opinion in that area, and, we have, so there's going to be, I think, lots of conversation on some of those issues going forward.
Yeah, I just wanted to make my comments since I
Okay,
drove
thank
all
you.
the way down here.
Okay. Any other comments on this topic?
Yeah, Phil, I guess on that note, I would just point out to everybody involved that, we're rejecting this. I think that there's a fair amount of work still to do. However, it is going to come right back when it does, a year and a half, 2 years, through the same process. So there's always a chance that it gets hung up again, or it can go smoother. And,
Well, I hope it goes smoother. I mean,
I think that it all depends on what's presented. So, hopefully that.
right, but if the planning commission does a survey, presents a legitimate town plan, it should be a fairly straightforward discussion. Public hearings.
I think what I've heard is if there is, a transparent survey, something that's, gone out and done with consultants and perhaps get a grant from Two Rivers, that they said that grants can be used for surveys. I think if everybody, if the survey comes back and people feel good about it on both sides of the aisle,
I'm with you.
then I think
The
that
last one they did, they had professional help on it.
that's
So I
gonna
don't
go
think that-
smoother.
Yeah, so I'm with you.
And I think that, so I'm just gonna say that there's also the potential to end up right back in the same spot.
Right, but even the last survey was done professionally, right?
It was interpreted professionally. I don't
Interpreted.
believe the questions were, I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't,
water
that's
will
not
be-
our,
Probably where.
John.
Just a comment, I think that if you're looking for a professional survey and you're looking for focus groups and the whole nine yards that have been discussed recently, you're gonna be looking at a 20 grand cost for something that extensive. I've been involved in those types of focus group type things, and they are expensive. And so just,
Yeah.
it's not something that's gonna be the same cost as the Castleton survey was, and you're talking about. So, just to have in your mind, that's in my opinion, that's the kind of costs that you're probably gonna be looking at.
And we've had discussions already saying that we don't have the budget monies this fiscal year, so the actual survey may have to be launched on July 1st of next year. But that's, I don't, let's get our facts.
No, I'm just
And
saying, that in my experience,
your observation is, I understand that, and you know, thank you. Okay. I think I'm ready to go on, if anyone ready for the next. Martin, our budget update for fiscal year '23.
Good evening. All right, the month of July, the first month of the new fiscal year. On the revenues, as you can see, the current taxes has $9 million in there. So the way this works,
Clive picked
before
up on that.
before you think we have,
We're salivating, and we have John's money right now.
yeah, we got his money right there. So the Education Department of Vermont will send me a spreadsheet of how much I owe the Hartland School District within the next couple of weeks. So for round easy numbers, I do not know how much we owe, but for round easy numbers, let's say it's $6.1 million. I would reduce the revenues by 6.1 and make a liability for the Hartland Elementary School. And each tax collection, we have 20 days to pay them, in the town of Hartland's case, a half a payment. So we would pay them $3 million. I usually keep $1 million in the liability. In the month of April, the state reconciles all the HS 122s and the budgets and sends me a new spreadsheet. I either owe the school more money or I don't owe the school money. So that's why that number looks so large at this point.
Okay.
August, it'll look the same. September, it will look totally different
Gotcha.
on that line. Otherwise, the revenues are, you take that out, the revenues are right in line where we're supposed to be at 8% for the first month of the new fiscal year. And you can see the rec department's a little bit under because a lot of their summer camp money comes in May and June of the previous fiscal year. So that will catch up May and June of the current fiscal year next year. The highway department, as soon as we get the first money collected, their revenues will slowly trickle in better and line up. Any questions on the revenues? Expenses, there's really nothing out of alignment as expected in July. If you look at assessments, it says we're at 30%. We have many payments and subscriptions due at the first of the new fiscal year. As you can see, the county tax half was due, Two Rivers, VLCT dues, the fire truck payment had to be made, and the Greater Upper Valley Solid Waste yearly fee was due.
There's one question. It just struck me that the IT services expense was so high so early.
Yes, so CCI, we have the Penton once a year bill. So we get billed in July for the new year, fiscal year. So over the 12 months, it will catch up to be the right on price.
Something new this year.
Yes.
Microsoft kind of changed things, so now we pay for all our certifications. Everybody has their own certification, or at least anybody with a email and computer. They charge us up front. We had to basically tell them how many we were gonna have, and then if we pick up anybody new, like a new employee, it's gonna be a little bit of a higher charge, but we won't see that down the road. It used to be billed monthly, and we could take people on and put people off, but they change things.
What do you mean by certification?
I'm sorry, a license.
License?
License, it's our license,
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
the 365 license.
I was gonna come to you with my computer problems.
So the assessments is always catch up throughout the fiscal year. So as you work your way down through the budget, you'll see the summer camp payroll is over budget. Obviously, that will catch up as the year goes on. So that will fall right in line as we budgeted for the year. Actually, you'll see it's down a little bit. It should be down year to date. But the rec department overall is just a little bit over budget, but that will catch up as the year goes on. The library, you notice, is a tad over budget. They couldn't use they used the free Indeed for advertising. They had 2 people and the 2 people backed out, so they had to go back to square one, but they have finally hired someone, so that's why their advertising is up and over. The digital subscription is over for the same reason. They have a yearly subscription, and they're all usually due in the month of July. The Valley News and some other New England. So that's why they're over budget, but they should catch up by the end. So if we take out the assessment that we've prepaid, sort of quote unquote prepaid, we're actually at 7%, so we're under budget year to date. The highway department, they're over budget, or they're under budget at this point, and a few of their lines you'll notice, the liquid dust control, we're only gonna get a couple more bills, so obviously that will catch up as the fiscal year goes on, so again, we kind of pay ahead on that. The payroll's right in line, so we are, the highway department, you see the culverts is up and over. We've moved half that expense to grants and aids. So the culverts is actually gonna be $8,532, and grants and aids expense went up by $8,532. I've moved half of it over there. You'll see that on the August fiscal year report. Otherwise, that's where the highway department is at this point.
Just to clarify, the grants and aid is actually the culvert project that we're doing on Jennyville Road. So that's why it got split out like that. All 10 were originally pegged for Jennyville Road, this being the town manager update, but that got cut back, so we're doing 5. But so the other 5 will be just put to culverts throughout the year, and that's why we split out the cost there.
I don't, it may be inappropriate to dive into this now, but please tell me. But with the grants and aid, does the granting institution, the state, recognize that the inflation has occurred and that we need more money for the grant, or is that a done deal?
Maybe with future grants, but this grant was written last year.
Yeah.
The grant agreement was actually signed like this time last year, so the answer to that is no.
Yeah.
And actually, we've already signed the one that needs to be done for September of 2023, and that one is a little bit more, but not to take into consideration the inflationary measure.
Any other questions?
Just an easy one, the subcontract line for $200,000, what's the project that that's targeted for?
What page is that?
It's
Page
under
2.
paving and resurfacing. 200 grand.
That's the
It's paving.
Clay Hill.
Yeah, that's the Clay Hill paving.
So it's the second half of it,
That's for the whole year. That's our paving budget for the year.
So that is so we are now into fiscal year 23. So that'll be for the Queechee Road side of Clay Hill Road. The one that we know that we were about $75,000 over on, recall that conversation. So the more expensive one was the Route 5 side, or the fire station side,
which is in progress.
which
Oh,
will
be
be,
in progress in
which
September.
would be next budget year. So this is still for the Queechee
So this is the one that's gonna happen in September.
Yep, September 18th.
Okay. And we allocated extra funds to cover the.
Well, I actually haven't allocated it yet, but you gave the okay to spend with the concept of backfilling with ARPA.
Right. Okay.
So on the income side, when you collect the 8% for late filers, is that going to be a separate line item?
It is the second line down. $6,990.98.
Isn't that the penalty on delinquent taxes?
Nope,
Where's the delinquent tax?
Oh. oh, it's worded wrong, I'm sorry, yes. That is the penalty for,
I mean, some of the late filer stuff you always haven't got if they haven't paid the taxes yet.
right, yeah, right, I haven't got them all, yes, so I gotta make up a separate line, it threw it into the same line, yes. Sorry about that, yes, you were correct. But the $6,990 is actually the 8% for late filing homesteads at this point.
Because we don't have any delinquent penalty.
Correct.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Clyde, I'll get that fixed.
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you, everyone.
So we're on to new business, the delinquent tax sale. Dave?
Yep, so, per statute, once that, once the warrant and levy has been recorded, in the clerk's office, the town is allowed to collect fees, for the sale. One in particular, the other ones are just kind of automatic. One in particular is authorization by the select board, essentially to pay the lawyer. And the lawyer essentially charges 15% on the principal balance of the uncollected or delinquent tax. So I am here looking for authorization to do that. I have a motion here, Phil, that you can read, but looking for select board authorization to go ahead and go forward with that. It's kind of a standard thing. It does get added, so a person that is delinquent, so you kind of start doing the math and why it's best not to be delinquent. But when you go delinquent, that's an 8% penalty, and then you have interest. And usually we look, once you are into your second year on delinquency, you pop up on our radar. If you then go to tax sale, and it goes far enough in the tax sale process, you get the demand letter and you still have the ability to pay before any of this kicks in. At this point we have 6, the lawyer's fees. In order to redeem and get clear, you do need to cover the cost of, what it's taken us to get here. So just my little pitch to, do what you can to stay on the right side of the delinquencies.
So if all 6 of these people magically, or their banks, pay up, we still owe the lawyer, because they've been doing the work, the percentage of the delinquencies as of the start of the process?
So they will, so we pay him $25 to write the demand letter. After that, once these get recorded, provided that you authorize here tonight, in order for the person to redeem, they have to cover like the recording cost or the cost to put it in the Valley News, the recording costs, other things that are involved and they're kind of outlined in statute. And you're going to have a legal fee of 15% of the delinquent, the principal, not the penalty and interest, but the principal amount. Mm-hmm. They now have a 15% legal fee attached to that.
Just out of curiosity, do any of the 6 have applications pending to get assistance from the state?
We have not, so I do know at this point, I feel fairly strong that 3 out of the 6 are going to right their situation, whether it be through the bank or through a third party. The other three, they're in this predicament because we have not, there's been no correspondence. So the other three.
Correspondence from you to them, there has been, but no.
Or for them, you know, from them to us. So they have, in every letter that that's been mailed to them, including flyers that Martin has also put into, you know, anything that goes out, that VHFA is available to them. The three remaining ones, one I do know VHFA, he's aware of it. I have not heard whether he is, let me back up. We hear once an application has been submitted.
From VHF.
From them eventually on any one of these six, and then this
But
process.
you hear from the state, basically.
We hear from, well, we're supposed to hear from them, but if we don't, we hear from the state.
Okay.
Process is supposed to stop immediately.
Right.
On these six, we have not heard that.
Okay.
On three, I believe that they're going to produce something that's going to alleviate them. Leaving three, we have not heard that they have submitted anything to VHFA or they've gone that route. Last year we started with more, we ended up with one going to tax sale. I don't want to say it, but there's really, it seems as though the way this is going, it may all get resolved prior to that, but it's tough to say. And then I should add, once it goes to tax sale, they have an entire year to redeem. You know, they cannot be evicted from the property for a year, so they still have a year to, whoever purchased it, pay the balance of what was owed, but then at that point, they owe the person interest for however many months.
12% a year, right?
What's that?
12% a year.
Yeah, and many of the potential buyers are doing it because of that. They're just looking to turn a profit, sadly. Okay, you have a motion you would like me to propose?
Like somebody, you just happen to be closest. Usually it's Mary.
I ask you to consider a motion authorizing payment for expenses actually and reasonably incurred for legal assistance in preparation for or conduct of the tax sale, provided that such expenses shall not exceed 15% of the total collected tax.
Uncollected.
Total uncollected tax, important word there. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor? Thank you, motion passes.
So Phil, just let me add on this subject, I had a couple questions on it, but, so the tax sale is scheduled for September 8th. I believe at 11 a.m., but I'll have to double check that. It's early for us, usually it goes into November. You did get a sheet that kind of outlines the six, and how much of the total delinquencies that is. I'll just point out that there was a second sheet in here, and I put this in here. It's got a total amount of basically 72,500. It's a really good number for us. We've been considerably higher in the past. Back when Martin and I first got here, there was like 9 or 10 years of delinquencies on here, going back to basically 2010 at the time. And it was upwards to 300,000, maybe even a little bit more in delinquencies. So we really have brought this down. And just to kind of hit this home is, you know, we're a municipality, so the tax revenue is kind of our lifeline. So the bigger our delinquencies are, the more problematic that can be for your cash flow. Now, too, unlike a business, if you are carrying a whole lot of accounts receivables that have been uncollected, same kind of issue. You know, it's great to have the account receivable in the sale, but unless you're collecting that revenue, you run into difficulties. So I just, Martin printed that off, and I felt good about it, so you guys got it.
And is the sheet with the names on it, is this still considered private, or is it, has it been published?
It is in the newspaper, it is on the website, it is in the hallway upstairs, you know, it is around. I just don't
Yep.
add insult to injury by,
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Town manager's update.
so I think the biggest thing here is Jennyville Road. My understanding, I wasn't out there this afternoon, Clyde, you probably have a pretty good idea. I believe we did not start today. We are still, there's still some question as to where the VTEL line is. Dig Safe didn't quite identify it, we had to bring them back. VTEL has an idea, they don't know really how deep it is, so I believe that that hopefully was identified this afternoon. Just know that that's a problem. My understanding is that the line that goes underneath Jennyville Road there, at least on Thatcher Fields' side of the road, is a fairly major fiber optic line. In preparation of us doing this dig, my understanding, at least they should have, they were going to, there is an overhead line, Clyde, on the opposite, on the uphill side. They have a line there that's for the local houses. They were gonna kind of bypass where we are, and they were gonna kind of jury rig around. I believe that may have happened this weekend, hopefully, but, you know, preparations, we've communicated with VTEL. There was some issues with Dig Safe, and hopefully by this afternoon, that's been, at least the location has been identified. I don't think we're gonna know the depth of it until we actually start digging.
Considerable orange paint on the road.
Is it? So we are moving forward in that. The last time I spoke to you, we had, the lowest bid was in the low 40s for this project. We went from a half mile to a third of a mile. We changed it so that we were doing the trucking and providing the material. Brought the contracting down to about $17,500, which is very good news. However, that $17,500 doesn't include, you know, the culverts. We need to tack that on, and then another couple of thousand for the stone that'll go in the ditch lines. So it's still gonna come to, you know, $27,000, which is about $6,000-7,000 over budget, but certainly better than the $42,000-45,000 that we were originally looking at.
But you have, 25,000 of ARPA money for ditching?
Ditching was not part of the ARPA, so we talked about, the Jennyville Road culvert.
I
Yep.
don't have the document in front of me, but I think there was a line in there that said 25,000 a year for 5 years, 100 a quarter for ditching in ARPA, on the top 10. And I thought we authorized at a previous meeting to go ahead with the first one.
So that was a line that came from the committee. The 4 things I understand that came from the select board so far was the rec and Damon Hall, the Jennyville culvert, and Queechee Road paving. And then last week we designated,
Well, I mean, I guess that's a good question, 'cause I have I could be wrong, right? I have a recollection that we said go ahead with 25 on the ditching, but maybe we didn't. I mean, if we just rewind that meeting and see if we
The
can
road's
find.
budget was 25 a year.
I mean, if you just go back to that agenda, whatever.
we could pull the minutes out.
Otherwise, you can just YouTube it.
We could pull the minutes out, but my understanding was the 2 buildings, Jennyville Road culvert and Queechee Road. We do have ongoing, you know, there was a fair amount of discussion, Jim, at the original community meetings on ditching and at the subcommittee level. When we got here, that was not as big of a conversation as the committee and
Yeah, but it made the top 10, it made their list of recommendations.
I think it did, yes.
So I guess the point is if we didn't authorize it, there was $25,000
Yeah.
for this year that we could authorize.
I would just remember that we've got the paving that we were talking about, inflationary measures, Three Corners intersection project, and I think that just the work that we looked at for those four that I just mentioned is really probably gonna eat up most of that, so, Jim, I would just hang, we've got highway surplus. I think it's a balance between highway surplus, ARPA, and Three Corners intersection, how this kind of shakes out.
So it just sounds like we have to stay on top of that. And I'll try to look back through my minutes and sort of see if I can find online, see if I can find that.
It's in the July 5th meeting minutes, just to let you know. If you're looking for them.
Okay, thank you, Cheyenne.
As we just talked about, Clay Hill is scheduled for mid-September. Doing a fair amount of work on, roadside mowing and some resurfacing and some grading and stuff like that in between projects here.
Dave, on the Quechee Road, between Gilson and Webster, sort of near where, there's a huge hole and red paint around it. So that means we know about it, I assume, and is that hot patch? Is that?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the spray paint's for, but, yeah, it would be a hot patch.
Yeah, someone would bend a wheel if they went into it, I think. My energy would be lost in it and not come out the other side if I.
Rec department, summer camp is winding down. Summer camp is ending as we speak. You're gearing up as we speak today. The after-school program is a go. We'll keep our fingers crossed and provided that we can continue that throughout the season. That's kind of it. Some other things here that are a little bit smaller. Rob continues to work on Damon Hall, continues to do the high work there. There is a new children's librarian to replace Amy McMullen. Her name is Tracy Joy. Welcome her. She starts August 24th. And to, in my update, to kind of, we spoke about this at the public comments, but Environmental Board or Act 250 has not responded as to what they're going to do with that application. They have requested additional information. My understanding is that additional information was provided to them, and we are just kind of waiting to see what they do with the application. I understand they had a change of coordinators earlier in the spring, and I think it's kind of new, and I think he's kind of working his way through the workload. That's it. That's all I got.
Just a quick question. What's the library HVAC issue?
What is the library HVAC issue?
Yeah.
Not sure I put it in there, but
This is where you have HVAC to the library and the North Hartland School remain in the periphery.
so down in the miscellaneous section, the HVAC is, we did 2017, 2018, we did a fair amount of work too. There's two circuits, for lack of a better term, there. Or two, I'll call it circuits. One does part of the building and the other one zone. There's actually, take care of the different zones, but one we had to revamp completely, and the other one is, is gonna need to be done at some point. Part of the problem was there's a Freon that you use. There's an easy fix to it, and kind of regigging what we did with the one zone, or kind of regigging the entire HVAC system to something newer. So that's been kind of hanging out there for a few years. Energy Committee looked at some things as far as some alternatives to the HVAC system. I think we're gonna need to redo a compressor in the near future, but, that's where it kind of sits.
Wasn't Freon banned in the 90s?
What's that?
So it wasn't Freon banned in the 90s?
Maybe in the 80s, but there is, I'm gonna get the terminology all wrong. I'll call it an H22 or something to that effect, that they're phasing out. But an H28 is okay. I think the one that we revamped to uses like an H28 or something to that effect. HVAC systems have a lifespan of 20 to 25 years. The building's getting near 20 years, so that was just the thought process there.
Okay, is there any correspondence? There was nothing in our packets that I'm aware of.
I got a letter from Phil Hardy that was kind of suspect.
Yeah, it was, gave you my account number where you're supposed to forward that payment to.
Yeah. It's on the way.
Yeah, thank you.
Just have a comment about the Jennyville Road project. We had a hysterical meeting today, historical. And two of the members, well, including me, I remembered in time to take Best Road, even though it probably wouldn't have been necessary because they were just painting stripes. But it would be nice if they could put a sign up at the end of Best Road to use it as a detour when they're actually, for people coming from the South Woodstock side, to take Best Road instead of going down. Because last week, I went to West Windsor to help them in their election, and I see the sign at Best Road said, "Work on the road." Then I got up there and they were completely blocked, so I had to backtrack and.
So it said work ahead, but they had it all gummed up.
Yeah, well, the road isn't that wide up there anyway, but it'd be nice, especially if they start some major digging on Jennyville, to put a sign, tell them to detour over Best. The ones of us that live there know it, but there are others coming over the hill from West Windsor, South Woodstock.
FedEx or UPS.
Yeah.
Jim, I'm scratching my head trying to remember what you called it wasn't a service award, it was a...
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the correct, the sensible wording.
Okay.
So I'm gonna get some help with that.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make my
Yeah,
own
so
notes. So
community service award, community something award.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I'm like shocked, and I'm not going to ask any more questions. Can we adjourn the meeting? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
So when shall we 3 do again? When the hurly-burly's done?